I make a distinction in my own mind between literature and story, where we're driven to see,
James,
driven by,
music.
we want to find out what happens next, and that takes the, that is the main impetus that pulls us through a book. Literature can be more artful, can be more architectural, can engage ideas in a more integrated way. Those two strands can cross one another, as in the Odyssey and in many other books. But I think I know in my own reading life, there are times when you want a story that's going to pull you through. And then there's other times when you want something that you can ponder and appreciate in a different way. So I think there is a distinction, but not always one of quality. It's of intent and shape, I think.
So you began with a goal of 1,000 books, which probably struck you as a daunting number, but you had to start somewhere.
Yes.
Did you incorporate the entries you'd written for the Common Reader Catalog?
The entries for the Common Reader Catalog were often shorter than the essays in 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die, but I did find many seeds for the essays that I wrote. You know, the approach or the angle that I took to our book, or I said something that I thought was worth saving.
And what were you hoping to achieve with those essays? To excite people about the prospect of reading that book?
I wanted the entries to feel like an invitation and to be welcoming rather than overwhelming. I think people are daunted by reading sometimes, especially when it comes to classics or books they've heard about for a long time. And I wanted to write in a way that was inviting, to say, here's the context for the book. This is why it's important. To give a little bit of a synopsis, but not really a synopsis, to give a reader's view of a weighing of the book and why it would repay your attention to do it. And often, in terms of the classics, I tried to find a particular passage that would spark that interest.
Did you limit the number of classics? You include Homer, Plato, Shakespeare, but was it important to diversify beyond the obvious choices?
Yes, but in terms of the classics, that wasn't that hard to do. You know, in my mind, I had a kind of structure of maybe 250 of the books people might expect to see in terms of classics, and then others that could be arguable, and there could be an equal number not in there. So I think I covered it pretty broadly.
And how many did you try to allot numbers to different categories? How many books of science fiction, mysteries, food?
I did it more by feel, saying I want more of this. When I got to the last 150 or so, I did a retrospective on what I had and made some decisions about I wanted to add a few books that were a little more lighthearted and things like that, or more books for children, because children's books are in here too. It's really meant to be a lifetime look. So I didn't have a hard and fast rule, but again, the metaphor that I gave you before about the store, I wanted, my idea was if you're walking around, there should be some of this, and is there enough for the some to have a shelf or not?
And stores put their books on the shelves in alphabetical order.
Yes.
And that's what you decided to do here? Alphabetically by author?
I did alphabetically by author, with the exception of maybe a dozen books. The Bible, the Quran, the Book of Common Prayer, that didn't have, Beowulf, that didn't have an identifiable author, Epic of Gilgamesh. But most of them are alphabetical by author, and I did that, one, because it's, people are oriented right away. They know the alphabet. But more importantly, any other arrangement that I tried, because I'd sort and resort the titles.
You could have done fiction and nonfiction, plays, poetry.
But I wanted
short stories.
I wanted there to be more of a sense of surprise. So I'll give you an example. In the T's in the book, there's a book by a man named Darcy Wentworth Thompson called On Growth and Form, which was written around the turn of the 20th century, and it's a book about his observations of nature. It's part aesthetics, part natural science. It's become something of an inspiration to designers as well as to scientists.
Take your fucking
And
move.
that's followed by a book
Sit there for
by a
10 more
woman named
fucking
Flora
minutes?
Thompson called Love Rise to
Fucking
Candleford, which is a lovely evocation of growing up in the English countryside. It's genteel, sedate, gentle, just lovely. And that's followed by Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So that kind
Hunter
of,
Thompson.
yes, so that kind of juxtaposition where people were going to find things they weren't expecting, I felt would be part of the fun of the book, to make the book fun to browse around in, and also to get people out of their habits. So they didn't just go to mysteries or military history, but would go to a book that they loved, and then perhaps
See,
be
this is what
surprised
black
at what was
people
before
do.
and after it.
This
I'm
woman
assuming
is
that
deliberately
you'd already
creating
read
a traffic
most of
jam.
the 1,000 books before
And
you
she's
started the
gonna go in
project.
front
But
of
how
me.
much research did you have to do to put this all together and to write short essays, which are almost a book review for each book?
Well, to write something short, I think it was
So-
Mark Twain who once said,
She's talking at the green light
in his correspondence somewhere, he says, I'm writing you this long letter.
and just sitting
because I
there,
don't have
like
time
making a
to write
traffic
short
jam.
to make things
And now
short
just
takes
because
time.
I've gone by her,
Also,
and then she
there was a lot
stops
of
to purposely
research
make another
to
traffic jam
recall
down there.
what,
And then I just went around her, and then she comes after me. This is what black
half of the book
people
is fiction
do.
and half nonfiction, so
This
there are a lot
is
of
what I
subject
have
areas. I
lived
want to
with
make sure I
for
have my
25
facts
years.
right.
I'm sorry.
And
Poor
I
black
also,
people.
when you're writing something about a work, especially something that's been around for a long time, you have to know enough to know what not to say, not just what to say, but what not to say.
But you give clues with these subtitles. For example, the entry for The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins is subtitled, A Meme is Born. And you've got William Golding's Lord of the Flies entry, Boys Will Be Boys. And so we get an awful lot of the story without you having to explain.
Yes, exactly. But that's part of as I said about the invitation. I wanted it to be fair because I discovered something that was really driven home to me since I've been talking about the book since it's been published. You mentioned that the series from Workman started in 1,000 places to see before you die. And that's more of a, just as people approach it, people don't think they're going to go to 1,000 places. So it's kind of like a fantasy catalog, and it's kind of freeing in a way to wander.
Well, you just go to like fuck up my flow.
I've been surprised by the number of people who've taken this and said, I'm going to read all 1,000 books, and it's kind of
They
daunting.
probably have read a few.
Well, yeah, but it's daunting in that way, and
How the hell is
my
it
advice to people
99
is to just
from
open it
going up
anywhere,
a
go to a
fucking
book
hill?
that you hope is in
How
there,
is that
you just like to
60?
be in there, read
And
about
okay,
that,
now it just
see if
shoots
I know
down to
what I'm talking
11.
about, and then browse around and see what you find.
Since books have played such an important role in your life, what will we learn about you when we spend time reading about
He
your
ignored
life?
the question about Graham Greene. That's
Well,
weird.
that's a good question.